The town of Clearwater sat quietly between a winding river and a stretch of old highway, the kind of place where nothing ever seemed to happen, and when it did, everyone remembered it forever. The afternoon sun hung low, warming the sidewalks and painting the storefront windows in gold. Inside a modest grocery store near the town square, Elena Reyes stood patiently in line. She was 62, small-framed, with silver beginning to weave through her dark hair. Her posture was straight, not from pride alone but from years of discipline. Raising a son alone after her husband's passing had taught her how to stand tall even when the world pushed back. She held a basket with simple items: bread, rice, vegetables. Nothing extra. She never bought more than she needed. Behind her, impatience stirred. A man in a pressed jacket and polished shoes shifted his weight dramatically. His phone was pressed to his ear, voice loud enough to carry. Every few seconds, he sighed heavily, making sure the cashier, and everyone else, noticed. When Elena stepped forward to pay, her card reader paused, blinking. "Please wait," the cashier said gently. "It'll just take a moment." The man scoffed. "Oh, come on," he muttered, ending his call. "Louder now. Some of us actually have places to be." Elena turned slightly, offering a calm, apologetic smile. "It won't take long." That smile, soft, composed, seemed to irritate him more. "You people always say that," he snapped. The cashier froze. Elena's smile faded, but her voice remained steady. "There's no need to speak that way." The man leaned closer, invading her space. "I'll speak however I want. Maybe if you learned how things work around here." The words stung not because they were new, but because they were familiar. Elena had heard them before. Too many times. In too many places. She straightened her shoulders. Respect costs nothing. The man laughed. "Neither does silence. You should try it." The cashier finally found her voice. "Sir, please." But the man wasn't finished. People like her slow everything down. Always a problem. Always in the way. A hush spread across the store. Elena felt the heat rise in her chest, but she did not raise her voice. She did not lash out. Instead, she did something that unsettled him far more. She met his eyes. "I raised my son to believe dignity is non-negotiable," she said quietly. "I won't lose mine today." Something flickered across the man's face. Surprise, maybe even embarrassment, but pride won. He sneered, stepping back with exaggerated disgust. "Whatever," he muttered. "Just hurry up." The card reader beeped. Approved. Elena paid, thanked the cashier, and walked out into the sunlight with her head held high. What she didn't know, what no one in that store knew, was that her son had just pulled into town. 2 blocks away, a black pickup rolled to a stop. Captain Daniel Reyes, United States Marine Corps, sat behind the wheel, hands resting lightly, eyes scanning the familiar streets he hadn't seen in 3 years. He was home on leave. Not announced. Not expected. Daniel had faced chaos in distant places, led men under pressure, and learned when to act and when to wait. Calm wasn't weakness. Silence wasn't surrender. As he stepped out of the truck, he noticed his mother walking from the grocery store, her pace measured, her face composed. But he knew her too well. Something was wrong. He approached, concern flickering across his disciplined expression. "Mom." Elena looked up, shock melting into relief. "Daniel." They embraced, her hands gripping him just a second longer than usual. "You're early," she said. "Thought I'd surprise you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Daniel noticed the slight tremor in her fingers, the way she exhaled slowly as if releasing something she'd been holding inside. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. Elena hesitated. Then she did what mothers often do. "I'm fine." Daniel didn't push. He simply nodded and walked beside her, carrying her bag, listening to the silence. A storm doesn't announce itself. It gathers. That evening, the house smelled of familiar comfort, warm spices, simmering rice, memories laid into the walls. Elena moved about the kitchen with practiced ease, while Daniel sat at the table, watching her the way he used to as a boy. "Who was the man at the store?" he asked suddenly. Elena paused. "You noticed," she said softly. "I always do." She sat across from him, folding her hands. It wasn't important. Daniel's voice was calm, but firm. "It was important to you." She sighed, the weight finally slipping free. She told him everything, not dramatically, not emotionally. Just facts. Words. Tone. The way the man looked at her as if she were less. Daniel listened without interruption. No clenched fists. No raised voice. Just stillness. When she finished, he nodded once. Thank you for telling me. Elena reached for his hand. Daniel. I don't want trouble. He turned his palm upward, squeezing her fingers gently. Neither do I. The next morning, Clearwater gathered as it always did, coffee shops filling, sidewalks waking. Daniel walked alone. Not in uniform. Not with authority announced. Just presence. He found the man outside a cafe near the square, laughing with someone on his phone. Confident. Comfortable. Daniel stopped a respectful distance away. Excuse me, he said evenly. The man turned, annoyed. Yeah. Daniel held his gaze, not challenging, not threatening. Simply unmovable. Yesterday. At the grocery store. You spoke to my mother. The man frowned, scanning Daniel up and down. So, Daniel continued, voice level. You disrespected her. Publicly. Without cause. The man scoffed. Look, man, I don't know who you think you are. Daniel took one step closer. Not aggressive. Intentional. I'm someone who was taught that dignity doesn't depend on witnesses, he said. And that silence doesn't mean permission. Something changed. Not fear, awareness. Daniel continued. My mother showed restraint. Strength. Grace. You mistook that for weakness. People nearby slowed. Not staring, listening. You don't owe me anything, Daniel said. But you owe her an apology. The man laughed nervously. Or what? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He reached into his pocket and placed something gently on the cafe table. Dog tags. Worn. Marked. I've stood between chaos and people who couldn't defend themselves, Daniel said quietly. I'm very good at choosing restraint. The silence stretched. The man swallowed. The bravado drained, replaced by something smaller. I didn't mean, he started, then stopped. Daniel's voice softened, but carried weight. Intent doesn't erase impact. The man looked around, realizing eyes were on him, not judging, just watching. He exhaled. I was out of line. Daniel nodded once. Say it to her. That afternoon, the man stood on Elena's porch, uncomfortable, humbled. I'm sorry, he said, meeting her eyes. What I said was wrong. Elena studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Apology accepted. No lecture. No victory speech. Just dignity restored. After he left, Daniel turned to his mother. You didn't need me, he said. Elena smiled. No, she replied. But it helped knowing you were there. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the town settled into quiet, Daniel stood on the porch, hands resting on the railing. The storm had passed. Not with violence. Not with noise. But with presence, discipline, and a reminder that true strength doesn't shout. It stands. And sometimes, it speaks just once, so no one forgets.